Bismillah, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. So last week we were talking about the hijrah, in particular, like some framing points before we got into just a recap of what the actual detailed kind of steps were of the Prophet ﷺ's migration from Mecca to Medina. Uh, and there's a few things that we mentioned that we wanted to think about as kind of a framing to the actual migration, so that we weren't thinking about it purely in the framework of the specific historical account, but how we could understand what was happening through these kind of framing metrics. Does that make sense? So the first one we said was we wanted to look at this in a frame not of they were leaving something behind, but more so they were going towards something. And the idea wasn't that the impetus of the journey was rooted purely in the escape from something, but the movement towards something. Right? And quite often, when we're in a place difficult, exhausting, no self care, outlets are not seen necessarily as mechanisms to enhance reality, but escapes from reality. Right? How do I leave behind the difficulty of hard family, people who don't understand, job loss, financial insecurity, wellness conditions, relationship issues, failing school, terrible boss, whatever it is? I turn to things to numb, but then reality slaps me back in the face. Here, they weren't kind of running away as much as they were running towards something. Does that make sense? We had kind of talked about that. We talked about how it wasn't a singularized journey as much as it was a collective. It wasn't individual migrations, but they were moving together as a group. We gave the example of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, who was the only person that they said made a public declaration that he was migrating, because Umar was known for his physical strength and kind of ferocity. So he declared to everybody in Mecca, whoever's mothers want to lose them tonight, whoever wants their children to become orphans, their spouses to become widows, know that I'm going for the hijrah, and you can meet me outside in this space. And we think about it a lot in this kind of prism of physical strength and the exertion in that sense. But Omar saying this, and we know he said it, and the Meccans collectively know, then likely the other people making that migration knew that Omar was there and he's with them and has their back. Do you know what I mean? And the collective experience of running towards understands that spiritual engagement and growth doesn't have to be an individualized journey. It's a communal experience. We kind of move together and grow together when we buy into a vision together, and we then actualize in pursuit of a mission together. It's not seen just purely as individuals journeying on their own, but as a collective, we bear impact on one another. We also talked about trust, tawakkul, that a lot of this was just in the reliance of the divine. And it wasn't just a lip service or set of platitudes that we sometimes feed one another, right? Somebody's going through real hell in their life. We don't know what to do. We feed them with statements that don't have substance. Put your trust in God, have faith in God. Maybe you need to just pray more. But it renders passivity if I've given you an answer to your challenge that now removes from me the need to walk with you through your struggle. They're in a place where that trust is deeply rooted in not a familiarity of what tomorrow offers. There's uncertainty in tomorrow, but they have polished for over a decade like who God is to them, and a familiarity of the divine coupled with an uncertainty of tomorrow is very different than an unfamiliarity of the divine coupled with an uncertainty of tomorrow. It's just going to create more friction and stress when there's two unknowns rather than an unknown of tomorrow, but a familiarity with the one who controls tomorrow. And they're moving with that sense of trust, not knowing what's going to happen in Medina, but still buying into a bigger vision and having a sense that whatever Allah is asking of me and whatever Allah's messenger is asking of me, I know that I can trust in what it is that they're calling me towards. And we spent a good chunk of time last week just talking about these framing narratives before we got into the particulars of it. There's one more that I wanted us to start to think about and really reflect on in terms of our own experiences today, that they went from Mecca to Medina and they're going to come back to Mecca, right? Whether you're familiar with the prophetic biography or not, like this is what happens towards the end of the Medinese experience, the Medinan period. They're going to come back to Mecca and reclaim Mecca, right? The Fath al-Mecca is something that we'll talk about probably, you know, 8-9 months from now, if that. But that's going to happen, right? It's not something that's an unknown. We know that that's going to take place. Uh, and it's an important framing to understand for a few different reasons. But before we get into some of those in particular, the first we want to start to reflect upon is they're in this Meccan existence that's holding them back. And the Medinese vision is something that they're aspiring towards. But in order to get to Medina, they have to be willing to let go of Mecca. Do you know? A place where they're being definitively persecuted and oppressed and chastised, but also it's the place of their belonging and the place that they've been brought up. I work with a lot of survivors of abuse. We have a shelter that we operate in the Bronx. We meet with many people who unfortunately have gone through this reality. May Allah make it easy for them. It's really hard for people to break out of abusive relationships because what is abnormal seems to be normal. And why there's a high rate of recidivism back to your abuser is because there's not necessarily the communal supports there for somebody who's kind of getting out of this. And it's hard to adapt to what is normal. And you run back to a place that what you were being mistreated through, you just are accustomed to it. You don't know how to function. And then people don't know how to function and support. And it just creates that much more of a conundrum. You know, it wasn't easy for people to leave from Mecca because for a lot of them, they were in a place where they had gotten accustomed to the experience. And also, they didn't want to leave behind their home. But in order to build Medina and then also come back to get Mecca years from then, they had to first let go of Mecca, right? And if they said, we're going to just stay in Mecca where we're being held back, rather than going to Medina where we have this vision and this ideal and what it is that would allow for us to reach a potential gain, then none of it would have happened potentially. Medina wouldn't have been established. Yathrib wouldn't have become Medina, nor would they arguably have been able to come back and reclaim Mecca without any type of bloodshed or violence. Does that make sense? And you want to think about this as they're journeying with all the things we said before: trust in recognizing unknowns, a collective communal experience that made it a lot easier to hold that uncertainty rather than individually kind of working through things isolated, marginalized, seeing that they were walking towards something rather than running away from something. The crux of what comes into my office and people dealing with difficulty, one, an absence of self-care, not knowing how to replenish emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, turning towards outlets that numb rather than things that create a sense of healing and kind of rejuvenation, revitalization. But two, not knowing what it is that's really holding us back and being able to acknowledge fully and let go of those things that then enable us to move forward. That can be in the most literal sense of an outward journey, but also an inward journey as well. the way that we're structured individually, each one of us, regardless of the faith we practice, our race, our culture, we function cognitively off of core belief structures. And core beliefs can be positive or negative. I'm worthy of love. I'm not worthy of love. I'm worthy of success. I'm not worthy of success. People like me. People don't like me. The world is safe. The world is not safe. But those core belief structures frame how I see myself, how I see others, how I make sense of the world. And they can be either in positive or negative frames. They serve as a root in essentially a system that then builds itself up, secondly, into intermediary beliefs, right? These create rules and assumptions. You know, I'm not beautiful. If I was lighter skinned, I would be beautiful. And then the third is kind of the output of decisions and actions. So you see the manipulation of a core belief structure where people build a multi-million dollar skin whitening cream industry in many kind of parts of the world that make people hate themselves and load themselves through a negative core belief structure in order for them to gain materialistically, right? But it starts somewhere. A parent who says, oh, I wish my child wasn't like this. You know, somebody who comments creates trauma for us in some way. The quintessential example that's utilized is that of a circus elephant that when it's a baby, it's learned helplessness. It's tied up with a rope. And in that, it gets to a place where it's made to be tame. And when it reaches adulthood and it's a massive beast, it's the same rope that's holding it in size and capacity. And from the outside, you could say, just break the rope. You're a huge creature. It's not a physical shackling, it's a psychological shackling, right? And you want to be able to think for yourself through self-talk, through the way people spoke to you growing up, society treats you, makes us internalize racism. What are the ropes that are holding me back? And this Meccan experience necessitated them saying, I got to let go of what's holding me back, even if it's familiar, in order to get to the place that we can achieve and reach our best. It's not an easy thing. They're going on an arduous journey across a desert where people literally are gunning for them from Mecca, wanting to hurt them. And we want to be able to start to reflect on this in the state of the Seerah that we're in right now, not what is Mecca at the end of 23 years, but at this decade plus when they're going to migrate and they've started to flee from persecution, but also run towards solace, right? If I was to identify what the Mecca is in my life at that phase, what's holding me back? And what is it holding me back from? What is the Medina that I can envision for myself? They're not just going from a locale to a locale, they're leaving what holds them back towards what propels them forward, but in the prism of what is rooted in what they've been given thus far around Islam as a religion. Does that make sense? Not in a moral relativism, not in a sense that can breed a an absence of universal ethics and values that creates now egocentricity, but in a God-centric prism. It's hard sometimes to think about some of these things. You know, I had a guy that reached out to me who was very kind of constrained, and we were talking on Zoom at like 2 in the morning in Ramadan, and he said to me, uh, you know, a framing question around gratitude, and he said, um, "Is asking questions a sign of ingratitude?" We talked about this for a while. Essentially, he had a mother who, whenever he had a question about something, she would say to him, "This is a sign that you are not grateful," meaning like you're a bad person for doing this. He's a grown man, like in his 20s. If you looked at him from the outside, right, from all types of standards, he's like physically healthy, dresses well, no one would assume he has this internal dilemma. And so I'm talking to him and I said, there's no problem us asking questions. And I gave him examples from Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah says, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. Indeed, we've sent on this earth khalifa, a steward, a caretaker. And in that portion of Surah Baqarah, the angels then question God, like, why are you going to send something to the earth that is going to create corruption and facade and bloodshed? And at the end of the passage, they relent to the idea that Allah knows best, right? But I said to him, in our theological understanding, angels are creatures of obedience. They just do whatever Allah tells them to do, and they're asking questions. And so if they can ask a question, you and I, as a human kind of experience, who have been given critical thinking skills and the ability to reason, we can definitely ask questions. And then I talk a lot, right? I'm sure you all notice. And so I just kept talking. And I talked for like 6-7 minutes, and he didn't say anything. And then he interrupted me, not rudely, but he said, are you telling me I'm not a bad person if I ask questions? I said, no. And then he just started crying. And he didn't stop crying for at least 3-4 minutes, letting out all of this stuff that was inside of him that was holding him back, not at a physical shackling, but the psychological shackling was then resulting in the physical kind of paralysis. Do you see what I mean? If somebody tells me my whole life everything I do wrong and doesn't tell me what I do right, there's a deep understanding that the Prophet ﷺ told his grandchildren he loved them, told his daughter he loved them, told his wife that he loved her, told his companions that he loved them. He wasn't prone to just pointing out, you do this wrong, you do that wrong, here's why you're terrible, here's why this is bad. And if I'm just exposed to either self-talk that's negative or rhetoric that is embedding within me a negative core belief structure, an unhealthy system that roots itself in outcomes that is unhealthy competition and comparison. What if I don't have this car? What if I don't wear this logo? What if I don't have this brand? What would it look like if I didn't leave my Islam at the door? I have to pretend like I'm this or I'm that. And this mode where I then straddle multiple spheres, and when I go to certain spaces that are supposed to feel like belonging, I feel more marginalized and isolated than anything else, and just reinforces a negative core belief structure. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of success. People don't like me. And people learn how to monetize us hating ourselves, let alone then when somebody hates themselves, they can only give you what it is that they possess in the first place. It's really hard to tell someone truly that you love them, not because you don't have the capacity to love someone, but you can't fully love outwardly if you don't like yourself. And in this place, they're letting go of what holds them back in order to go towards what will compel them forward. But they have to acknowledge and understand that it's not working the way that it's going right now. And if I don't let go of this thing, it's going to keep me from where it is I can potentially be. You'd want to think about it in a few frames. One, what is keeping me from moving forward? Not just outward obstacles, but inward obstacles that can be the product of an outward obstacle. When FBI visits me in my house, when I get on and off of planes and I'm detained and profiled and surveilled, what's going to keep me from getting on a plane is not going to be the outward experience of iniquitous policy, but it's going to be what they seek to put inside of me as a minority that makes me then say, maybe I'm just not going to ever fly again. Do you see what I mean? When you don't see people who look like you in books or television or on movie screens, when there's gross misrepresentations and stereotypes, when you have to laugh at jokes that are at your expense, it's all built to create inward senses. When somebody tells you you're only worth something if you're married or you have kids or you own a house or this or that, it sets now these senses of self that are not healthy. Does that make sense? And at this juncture, this entire group of Muslims, they are willing to let go of what's holding them back in order to get to what will not only move them forward, but move the rest of us forward, right? However many millions of people are making Hajj right now, may Allah accept it from them, right? These guys had to leave Mecca in order for all of those people to be in Mecca right now. Do you understand? And if they didn't leave what was holding them back, it would bear impact collectively. We saw this when we looked at Al-Isra wal Miraj. The Prophet is given the opportunity to drink wine or drink milk. He drinks milk. He could drink wine. Prohibition is not in place at that time. The movement away from the wine is not because it's alcohol as much as it's not a pure substance. It only exists through some form of adulteration. It's not the same as milk that's just pure in its form. Do you see? And when he chooses the milk, Angel Jibrail says to him, what? Like, good, had you not done so, it would have caused the generations of your community that come after to go in the other direction, right? But that choice impacts. Do you see? They have to move for these people to be in Mecca right now, right? So what I'd like for you to do, just take a minute because more people have trickled in. You turn the person next to you, exchange some names. What do you think about this idea of kind of how we can identify what holds us back, right? What are the like literal ropes aside the psychological like ones that are shackling us, keeping us from moving forward? And if I was to identify for myself individually, like what is that experience for me and what is the Medina that it's keeping me from? What is it that I'm not reaching consequently because of this thing that's holding me back? Does that make sense? But if we can turn to the persons next to us, talk out for a little bit, what's coming up for us so far? What are we taking away? And then we'll come back and discuss. Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, where you are at the moment. Just
Tommy, man, how are you? You doing okay? Good to see you, man. Okay, so what do we think so far? What are we talking about? What do we discuss? Anybody? What does your hat say? What does your hat say? Gangsters buy flowers. Nice. Is it the clothing line is called Gangsters Buy Flowers? Do they make anything other than hats? Me? There we go.
So we talked about that, and then Nina asked me about reverting, and what that experience was like. So we talked about that as well.
And a lot of people liken the hijra experience to converting to Islam, right? You're leaving from one state to go to another state of existence. It's not easy. I can't tell you what it's like because I've never done it. My wife is a convert. She converted 27, 26 years ago, long time ago, mashallah. Um, and you all see how many people take their shahada in our community. I mean, I'll make it easy for all of them. Um, but sitting with many people in those conversations and talking about what that's like, it's like very real. You know, family dynamics might change, relationships change, lifestyles change, and trying to think out what all of that means, um, to leave something behind in order to get to someplace else. It's not like a very easy decision as such, you know, and creates like a very interesting analogy for what the hijra experience is like. Every time someone takes their shahada, they're essentially exemplifying that hijra. They're making their own journey from one place to another place. And it inevitably requires leaving something behind in order to get to another arena, right? What else did we discuss?
I think sometimes uh, it's also self-inflicted pressures that holds us back, um, which causes us to put pressure on ourselves, judge ourselves based off of not only society situations and what you're surrounded by, but also the energy that you're around too. Um, I think that also the energy that you're around also impacts your judgment and how you perceive yourself. And I think that also sometimes holds you back from being quote unquote better. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Other thoughts? You want him to say something?
I don't think I had a lot, but going off of what the brother was saying, I was saying.
You don't know his name? Weren't you guys in the same group?
Maz.
Yeah.
I just want to make it clear he's my brother.
Oh yeah.
But I was saying like a good example. I think that you could see this where society puts these thoughts in your head, and these aren't your actual thoughts. It's like when you see kids, like alhamdulillah, like when you ask them what do they want to be when they grow up, they'll like shoot for the stars. Like they'll say like I want to be president, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be like the best chef in the world or something, you know. But as they get older and you ask them that same question, um, they start to like minimize their dreams, for lack of a better word. I don't know. It starts to get quote unquote more realistic what their goals are. Or you'll ask them, oh, like why are you in school right now? Oh, it's just to make my parents proud because they want me to do it. A lot of it is coming from external, not internal.
Yeah, or if you nuance that idea that their pride of the parents is rooted in the accomplishment of an external, right? Like love is very easily withdrawn and only offered conditionally in numerous instances, do you know? So, how many people do you know that an elder in their life has said or stopped talking to them because they didn't agree with a decision that was made? You know, you didn't study this, you want to marry that person, like how could you do this? And then communication is just cut off. You know, somebody makes a mistake, there's a withdrawal of love. Somebody annoys someone, there's a withdrawal of love. So I'm in this constant pursuit of validation that says maybe if I get this, this person will actually be happy with who I am, right? But that's the whole idea. You're being held back through what's holding them back, and they can only give you what they possess in the first place. Their unhappiness is not because of you. Their unhappiness is because nothing is making them happy to begin with. Do you know what I mean? And then it's hard to find internal senses of contentment and balance because we look for these measures when people in our lives We're supposed to be providing care. They're not giving us that care. Do you see? It's an important segue point because you'd want to also think about who are you in this scenario, right? Are you the people journeying to Medina? Are you the people who are being left behind in Mecca, like the ones who they're journeying away from? You don't want to be somebody who your interaction with someone is the cause of them being held down and held back. It doesn't mean you just kind of are indifferent towards someone's well-being and you just say yes to everything that they do. That's not real love or care. Someone's hurting themselves in some way. But if you are the contributing variable to someone else's low self-esteem, low self-confidence, low kind of ability to deal with the world because all you've done is betrayed or hurt or caused challenge, it's remarkable that all of these people are leaving Mecca to go to Medina, but it's also not okay what the people were doing to them that made them have to leave Mecca in the first place. Do you see? Which one do you want to be? And are you going to be the people who came from Yathrib to the Prophet in the 12th year when we talked about the second pledge of Al-Aqaba and said, come to us, we will help you? Are you going to be the ones who are journeying towards those people? Or are you the ones that they're running away from? Right? And that's why it's important to understand you can have pain and be validated in your pain. May Allah make it easy and heal. You can't use the pain as an excuse or anything else as an excuse to like harm somebody else. Right? If God forbid my grandfather abused my father and he abused me, and you could say, I'm sorry that happened to you. And then I said to you, and that's why I abused my son. You can't say, hold on, Khalid, that makes sense. You can say, even though you went through it, you are not entitled to hurt your son. Do you see what I mean? Right? And then there's people who they're just jerks. Don't be a jerk. If you come to the hadith class we do on Monday, and we've been talking about ihsan, a lot of the examples we've been using about the exertion of ihsan is when somebody has a power balance in their favor and they're still doing right by someone who has a lesser amount of power than they do. Do you see? And at some level, when realization comes at a later stage in life, you still want to the best of your ability, remedy with wisdom, which you might have done at a time that you didn't know what you were doing, but it still came from you. Do you know? And this is where it's beautiful to have people to journey with, because sometimes the rest of us can say, when you're not like who you are, like who are you, right? A friend of mine, wasn't feeling so well the other day, and she just wasn't being herself. So I sent her the PDF of a children's book that we used to read to my kids. That's called Grumpy Monkey, right? It's just about a grumpy monkey, and the monkey's just in a bad mood all day, and all the other animals in the forest. Why are you so grumpy? Why are you so grumpy? And then at the end of it, I forget what the animal was, but it's like a small monkey, maybe like a big rhino or something comes, and they sit on a tree branch together, and the rhino just puts his arm around the monkey and says something like, it's okay to have a bad day once in a while, right? He doesn't like explain or get upset or annoyed. He just knows that's not who the monkey is, right? And it's there to hold the monkey's grumpiness. He doesn't have to hold it by himself. Do you see what I mean? It's hard to be held back, and it's that much harder to be held back alone. This is why one of Shaitan's tactics principally is to isolate us and to have us not be in a place where we lean on each other or support one another or build deep friendships with one another, or relationships are only rooted in the physicality of something, shared race, shared culture. I don't know how to actually connect to you at the level of vulnerability because I don't know what to do with your vulnerability. You come to me and start crying about what you're going through. It makes me feel uncomfortable. No, man, you're Muslim. Don't feel uncomfortable. You don't have to do anything sometimes, right? Just be kind to someone. Let them know that they don't have to go through it alone. And then if there's stuff that's serious, let us know. We can figure out how to get the right people involved who are professional to help someone. But the gist of it, you don't want to be the Meccans in this scenario. You don't want to be the reason why 10, 20 years from now, somebody has been held back through what it was that you did to them at an earlier stage in life. You bullied that kid, you harassed that person, you were mean to that girl, you were petty, you were catty, whatever it was, gossiping, lying. I'm sorry, I was more immature, but what it does to someone's heart in the long term, there's like consequences to that, right? May Allah make it easy for us. And so if somebody has done it to you, you deserve for your own sake to find your healing, but you can't use that pain to also hurt someone. And if you're doing it without pain and you're just a bad person, don't be a bad person, right? It's as simple as that. For no one else's reason other than all of those people will have full capacity to stand on the day of judgment and say, that servant of yours did this thing to me. And that's why I couldn't enjoy the rest of my life. Do you see? What I'd like for you to talk about a bit, because it's important, right? Why is it hard to let go of things? It's not easy. And we don't want to pretend like it's easy. You don't have a button that just says, now I let go of it, now I'm holding on to it. There's a lot that goes into it. And if we can't understand the steps that go into it, it's not going to be easy to get to the Medina. And we're just going to say, I'm just going to be stuck in Mecca. This is all that there is that I have going on, right? What makes it difficult to let go sometimes? Does that make sense? If we can talk about that a bit, if you don't know the names, like share some names. Let's discuss what makes it tough to let go, and then we'll come back and talk. Go ahead. Okay. So what are we talking about? Maybe we can hear from some people. What do we discuss? Yeah.
So we were talking about how something that I feel like is a really common theme of holding people back is their comfortability with kind of being stuck in whatever is bringing them down. Like, let's say they're sad about something or they're grieving or whatever the case may be, or to your example earlier, like a toxic relationship or not liking a job or whatever the case may be. I think it takes a lot of courage to just go with the God's plan and a lot of vulnerability to just kind of be like, whatever is for me is for me. And I think a lot of times people get caught up in the safety safety of being sad, if that makes sense. Because you already know, since you've been stuck in it for however long, like you kind of know that things are gonna be feel bad regardless. So you don't have to worry about what if something goes wrong. You already have the idea in your head that things are wrong regardless, as opposed to if you just kind of release any expectations, or not really expectations, but release the intense sense of control that you want to have that's making everything seem like not great because it doesn't happen. Or do you know what I mean? Like the sense of, I don't think I'm explaining this as well as I did when we were talking, but just kind of if you let go of this safety net of being sad and just trust in whatever happens in Allah's plan, like you I'm getting stage fright. When
You getting stage fright? What do you think is going on here right now? What is
when you let go and just like trust Allah's plan, then there's room for things to go wrong in a sense, because you think about like, okay, well, if I get this job opportunity, like if I pray for all these good things to happen, if I pray to get out of this relationship, if I pray for like a new job, if I pray for whatever, and then I get it, then there's a chance of losing it, you know. So but if you do lose it, then that's just part of Allah's plan, and that means another door is opening for you. So I think something that holds a lot of people back is just not being vulnerable, or being scared to be vulnerable, and being scared to get out of that safety and comfort, or that false sense of safety and comfort, and just staying down and not giving your trust in like Allah bringing you higher because you're afraid of falling.
It makes a lot of sense.
Period.
Yeah, it does. Great. All right. Yeah. Okay. Can anybody relate to this? Yeah. Can somebody explain back just so everyone knows that we're on the same page? Yeah. No, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, right? And understanding the paralysis that comes from being acquainted with a certain level of negativity. Let's use sadness in this. It then says, well, this is kind of where I'm at. What if tomorrow can kind of drop even further, right? And joy brings me up, but then it creates the fear that I'm just going to fall harder if I lose the thing that made me joyful. And I won't be like the same sad as I was before I took the leap. I'll be more sad because I experienced happiness, but it was fleeting, it was temporary. Do you see what I'm saying? Islam is about rida, right? May Allah make us people of contentment. Inward balance and contentment coexist with sadness and grief. It's not about fleeting happiness in a consumer driven society that is just about getting you to buy things. But really, what you're purchasing is novelty. You're not purchasing happiness. You know, the goal of this religion, for example, is to like value what you have for years, right? And not wonder if something else would have been better. It's remarkable that somebody could be married to someone for 50 years, but at the end of it, still be happy, right? Not 50 years of misery, but what's the difference? That person still found appreciation in what they had every day for 5 decades. Do you know? And every day you just fall more in love with something, right? A lot of that's rooted in self talk and how perception is based in self talk and the treatment of something in actualized gratitude. Why does our prophet, despite having a masjid that shares a wall with his house in Medina, we're going to talk about probably in a few weeks, still go to pray at Masjid Quba, which was the first masjid he ever had? He's got loyalty and appreciates things from when he had nothing. Do you know what I mean? So he still gives gifts to his wife's relatives and friends after she passes. And he says, she was with me when nobody else was with me. Do you know? That kind of self talk creates perspective. Do you see what I mean? Just like self talk creates, like, I know this is good, but what if it doesn't work out? And then it'll be worse than when I didn't have it. Does that make sense? Right? What else makes it hard to let go of things? Because a lot of us are holding on to a lot of stuff, man. and it makes it hard to enjoy what's in front of us, to find value what's in front of us, and we just deepen in it. Yeah, go ahead.
I think what Zainab and I were talking about is also like the lack of closure sometimes, depending on certain events. Like we have we talk about weather a lot, but then sometimes like we need to stop thinking about it as like a superficial entity and as like the reality of our life sometimes. Like as humans, like going back to what the sister behind me was saying about control. We love to have control, which is ironic because we can't even control our next heartbeat or our next breath. Yet we want to control every aspect of our life. And sometimes we take things not going our way and we try to figure out what we could have done to change like a possible outcome. Like for example, let's say someone who was sick in the hospital and they passed away. We try to think about different, chemo treatments or different medicines they could have taken or a different hospital, a different doctor. But the reality is like no, that's just what Allah decreed and we have to accept it. And I think a lot of times we get so stuck on the possible future we could have had we taken a certain route or a certain direction in life. We tend to forget that sometimes like it would just be and it is like that's like sometimes the actual reason why things happen. Like we don't need to know why.
The simplicity of the theology that we have is not meant to be understood in a vacuum, but as a potential prescription for a lot of the things that stress us out and create anxiety. Who benefits from you being overwhelmed all the time? It's not you, but it's the people who are going to get you to not succeed and excel as a minority, to get you to have self doubt and self loathing, to believe that achievement is rooted in just things that are worldly and materialistic, to not live by a sense of ethic and value, to feel happy when somebody uh, gives you something which you were entitled to in the first place, and then makes you feel guilty because you didn't say thank you for what you should have had to begin with. Do you know? And recognizing then when you have verses that say things like, indeed, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. When you are comfortable with the one who is in control, but also trust in the one that's in control, and you know whatever it is that's coming at you was through his decree and not through systems of whiteness, anti blackness that are purposeful in making us be agitated all the time, then it'll be easier to take a breath and say, forgiveness is not an obstacle. It's still my right. It's not my responsibility, but I can do it for me and not feel bad about not doing it on my own terms. I move forward in a way that allows for me to have kind of healing and contentment. Yeah.
I was gonna say also something new that I just got reminded of when you were saying kind of who benefits from you being overwhelmed. And then you had mentioned the like kind of whatever it is, like the system or the person that's like overwhelming you, like people kind of getting a reaction, and then also on the flip side when you had mentioned about like forgiveness and things like that being free. Um, it reminded me of this ayah in the Quran. Just lost it. Um, what I just lost like the verbatim, but it's essentially like what better reward is there for goodness besides goodness? And I think one of the things that holds people back as well is the fear of like or the lack of reciprocity. Because it's really easy to think like, oh, I want to do this for like this person or like this um, program or whatever the case may be, but thinking about, well, what if it's not appreciated or what if I don't get it in return or this and that? Whereas we're literally taught that like there is nothing more rewarding for being good and being like a good person than being a good person, because of like the rewards and everything you get from it. So I think that's something that holds people back a lot, and then that's also something that's really helpful to remember, which in turn I think opens up like a lot of opportunity for Baraka, and which in turn opens up a lot of space for you to receive a lot of good things, and then kind of also solve the problem of like releasing things. So there's like a lot of wholesome circle moments.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And understanding that is it's what I, if anything, I'm entitled to is I'm entitled to contentment. Do you know? You don't want to live like in a place where you're cowering and kind of stuck. And then communally, we have responsibility to build the things for people that we will also potentially be asked about, right? So every person who their reality is not as simple as like, okay, if I leave this house that is anything other than a home, where do I go? Well, that's what we have to build for people. Somebody's stuck in a marriage that doesn't make sense. Somebody's stuck in a job cycle that doesn't make sense. Somebody, a number of guys that I have met on the west side of Washington Square Park, and I'm asking them, why are you still selling drugs, man? And they'll say, Imam, like nobody's hiring me for anything, and this is all I know how to do, and I got to still feed my kids. Like, what do I do, right? When you are stuck and don't build what you have the ability to build, you can't create the job to then hire that person to have the reentry that makes sense for them, let alone minimally. It makes zero sense that in New York City, there's not a Muslim influence reentry program. Do you know what I mean? And if we just tallied everybody in this room, we probably have every skill set needed to build it, do you know? Because I'm stuck and I don't know what's holding me back. I'm not bold in my visioning and thinking about how Allah is the one that gave me creativity. Do you know? And I don't have to march based off of what somebody else is telling me to do. I can, on my own terms, kind of go and within capacity do what it is that I have the ability to do. You see what I mean? You want to think about this in a way that is not like harmful, but in a way that goes at a pace that makes sense. So you don't unleash like tons of stuff and you don't know what to do with it, but gradually and progressively say, how do I come to terms with things? And how do I get to my Medina so that I can come back and make sense of the Mecca that I had to leave to turn it into what it is that it needs to be too? They come back to Mecca. They don't say good riddance, but the whole thing comes full circle. But they have to first let go of what's holding them back. You want to experience that for yourself. What am I just numbing under the facade of real healing? And why is it hard to let go? And who are the people that are keeping me from getting to where I need to be? And as difficult as it might be, I need to address it in some way. Okay, Maghrib is in like 15 minutes. We want to talk about the actual. We talked about some parts of the Hijrah, and we want to talk, get started on it, so then we can kind of come back to it. I'm going to be in Panama next Wednesday, so we won't be meeting next Wednesday. And then I don't know yet. I know I should know, but I don't know. The Wednesday after, if we're going to meet here or we're going to meet in the new space. I feel like we're gonna probably meet over there, but I don't know. So just kind of we'll let you know. But next week, I'm not gonna be in the country. I'll be back Thursday, inshallah. I'll be gone Monday through Wednesday. So if you come on the Monday, halakha also. I have to go to Panama, uh, so I won't be here. But yeah, if there's things people want to do alternatively, also let me know. So when we're advertising, we can do that. Uh, um, I would like for everyone, as best as we can. Some of us have been coming to this thing for more than a year, right? So like a goal for you aspirationally, but also just to like make me feel better, you should try to learn each other's names. Do you know what I mean? We've been doing this for a while together. Like connect at the level, right? I'm not saying this about you, right? But do you know what I mean? So even if next Monday someone was like, hey, it'd just be great since we're all just coming ritually to the space, we still come and maybe we'll just share a meal together or we'll do something Eid oriented together. But if one of you has an idea that you'd want to do next Wednesday, let me know. We can still invite everybody to it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah? Okay. Nobody's going to tell me anything. Great. So the Prophet ﷺ is in a place where people start their migration. The companions are going, but he needs particular permission from Allah to leave Mecca, right? Because he's not doing like pretty much any of this without divine instruction. Now it's time for you to go. Now it's okay for you to go because he was told, if you remember, first like tell people in kind of secrecy, then you make a public proclamation, like do this, do that. So here too, he needs this insight. Abu Bakr radiallahu an comes to the Prophet to seek permission to migrate, and the Prophet alayhi salam, he comes into Abu Bakr's home and he says to him to wait until Allah's permission comes. And Abu Bakr radiallahu an, he says to the Prophet alayhi salam, uh, essentially, are you hoping that Allah will tell you that I should accompany you on this journey, right? Like my companionship, is that something you're hoping for? The Prophet alayhi salam says, like, yes, that's what I'm hoping for, right? So there's a lot that goes in particular within the Sunni tradition of Islam that highlights the just unique relationship that Abu Bakr radiallahu anh has to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and why it is that they're making this journey together uh, in this mode of real friendship, real companionship. How old is the Prophet at this time? Oh, are you gonna answer? I feel like you always get this question wrong, and then you get it right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I always got it right though.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like then the opposite. You always get it right. So how old is he at this time?
So 40, if he's doing Hijrah, so
Yeah.
then he was 13 years in Makkah Mukarramah, right? So that's 40 plus 13, 53.
Yeah, great. Well done. Look at me. I'm a jerk. Yeah. So he's 53, and Abu Bakr is older than him, and they're still good friends. Statistically, today, most men, if you ask them how many deep friendships they have, the answer is 0. Across like backgrounds. Used to be 1, before that 3, before that 5. The average, not acquaintanceships, but deep friendships, 0. A big part of our spiritual diet is the friends we keep, the people we surround our hearts with, right? May Allah surround us with hearts that are gentle and tender, and make us those whose presence brings benefit and relief. The Prophet is going to his friend, and they still are friends after a long time. They invest in this relationship. Allah blesses you with good companionship. Don't let it go for foolish reasons. You know, they should reach out to me. Why am I not being, why am I always the one being reached out? Maybe that's just the dynamic of your friendship, right? Everything doesn't always have to be about why something isn't working. Sometimes, barring abuse and oppression, you got to think two people create a dynamic. There's going to always be somebody that plays certain roles versus other roles. Does that make sense? They're doing this and they're good friends. And here we also are in a place where we get a insight that the Prophet doesn't do anything without Allah's permission to do it. Does that make sense? So Abu Bakr radiallahu an, he starts to prepare from that time, and he's getting what it is that they're going to make this journey on ready, seemingly like camels that they're going to go on, and he prepares these camels for a long period of time, and the Prophet alayhi salam is going to come to him now later in the month of Safar. And towards the end of Safar, they say on the 27th, the 26th of Safar, this is where the Prophet and Abu Bakr begin their journey. When is the month of Safar in relation to like the month of Muharram?
Right after.
Yeah. So how much time has passed that people are starting to, because a lot of companions have already left to make this hijrah. The Prophet's been waiting, right? So there's been a good amount of time before he and Abu Bakr actually start to go forward. And when the Prophet comes, he tells that they've been given permission to go, and Abu Bakr's whole family starts to help them get ready. Asma, who is another daughter of Abu Bakr from a different mother than Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she's older than Aisha, but Asma's mother was not Muslim. And so Abu Bakr ends up like leaving that marriage because he's Muslim, his daughter's Muslim, his wife is not Muslim. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha is younger than Asma bint Abi Bakr. And Asma, she's noted as helping to prepare like the food and the meals. And we're going to talk about how in the first few days, when they've kind of backtracked their steps, she's like playing a role in bringing them provision and food. But they all have to be in a place where they are keeping this to themselves, right? It's not being announced for everybody. Everyone doesn't always have to know everything. And sometimes it's better that certain information is not shared more broadly with everyone, and certain things are kept where they need to be kept. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he and Abu Bakr radiallahu an, they're getting ready, they're getting their provision ready. And Abu Bakr radiallahu an, he essentially at this juncture, they say like everything of his is for Allah and his messenger. He was a very wealthy man. He was the one that purchases the freedom of Bilal radiallahu an. He sets forth emancipates like many people. His father says to him, if you're going to buy slaves, why are you purchasing the slaves? Like there was two women, Lubayna and Zunaira, who were the servants of Umar at that time and Abu Jahl, and they were physically abusive of these people, right? Umar used to beat this woman so much. When he got tired, he would say, don't think that I'm having mercy on you. I'm just tired and want to get my strength back. I'm going to continue doing this. Abu Jahl used to hit this woman so much, she actually lost her eyesight. Abu Bakr sets them free. He emancipates them. And his father says, if you're going to purchase and emancipate slaves, why don't you set free some like strong young men who will have your back? And he says, I'm not doing it for this reason. Like he's just trying to do right because it's the right thing to do. Does that make sense? But he spends down a lot of his money and he is using what he has left to be able to prepare for this journey that they're going to be going to Medina on. The Prophet ﷺ tells him that I'm going to pay for the camel you prepared for me. You know, meaning he's not trying to take charity from anybody. It's not something that he's allowed to do. And so they leave Aisha and Asma without anything at that time, you know, because they're moving forward. But as a family, they're buying into this vision, they're buying into this mission. Does that make sense? When they get to the night before they're going to leave, there's a verse that we want to look at that's in reference to the night of the Hijrah. So if you open Surah Al-Anfal, the 8th chapter of the Quran, it's 30th verse. So 830 of the Quran. Does anybody have it? We can read the English, the Arabic of it. You have it?
Yeah, I have it.
Go for it.
And remember, O Prophet, when the disbelievers conspired to capture, kill, or exile you. They planned, but Allah also planned, and Allah is the best planner.
Great. Somebody want to read the Arabic?
وإذ يمكر بك الذين كفروا ليثبتوك أو يقتلوك أو يخرجوك يمكر الله والله خير الماكرين.
Yeah. And you hear this like quoted a lot, that Allah is the best of planners, right? They plan, you know, and Allah also plan, and Allah is the best of planners. This is in reference to the night before the Prophet's Hijrah. The Meccans were coming to kill him. So they are in a place where they devise a plan. They leave Abu Lahab out of it, and a man by the name of Mut'im ibn Adi, who is protecting the Prophet at this time because Abu Lahab had relinquished it. If you remember, Abu Lahab took over as the head of their clan after Abu Talib passed away. Does this make sense so far? People remember? So they left him out, as well as the man who was protecting the Prophet. And they got everybody else together to devise a plan. And they said, all of us going together and stabbing him at once means that they can't then attribute it to any one of us. And there's no way they can then take reparations against all of us. They'll only be able to take blood money for the killing, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he devises a plan with Ali radiallahu an, so that Ali is in his bed at that night, and he does this for a couple of reasons. One, he tells Ali that there's things that the Meccans have entrusted me with that when I leave, you have to give them back their stuff, which is crazy to think about. They're coming to kill him, and he is so honest that he is commissioning his cousin to ensure the return of the property of the people who are trying to murder him, because he is still fulfilling his promise and trust. Do you see what I mean? Right? And Ali radiallahu an, he does what he is told because he's also Ali radiallahu an. The magnitude of this from the standpoint of just being a person of integrity, you know, I'm going to do whatever it is I can to fulfill my end of the bargain, to fulfill my end of the oath. And Ali carries it forward. The Prophet ﷺ was reciting Surah Yasin. People know Surah Yasin. I don't remember the verse number. But, you know, the Prophet gets to the verse, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا, right? That they create a cover between them and behind them. Let me just look it up really quick.
It's 9.
Verse 9. Yeah. So this, when the prophet's reading Surah Yasin on this night, and when he gets to this verse, this 9th verse of Surah Yasin, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا, he takes dirt in his hand and puts it in the air, and all of the people who come to assassinate him, they're then left with dust in their eyes, meaning they can't see what's going on. Does that make sense? This is what the verse is also like giving a sense of understanding. It's rooted in terms of an experience that's taking place centuries before, right? But the particularities of it, the Prophet is reciting these verses and gets to this verse, and when he reads this verse, he puts this dirt in the air, and they're all then blocked from being able to see him leave. They go into the home and they remove the cover of the bed, and they find Ali radiallahu anh there. Why is it deeply wise that Ali is in the bed? Particularly, he could have put Omar in the bed, right? And everyone would be like, "Oh my God!" And they run out of the house. Ali is the son of Abu Talib, who is the previous head of the Banu Hashim, and Abu Lahab is, you know, now going to be responsible if somebody killed the son of his older brother who he succeeded in authority over the clan. Do you see? Now, Ali radiallahu an, he's got to also be courageous enough to sit in that bed when this is happening to them. Does that make sense? But there's strategy, there's a plan, right? It's all not spontaneous. You're talking about things that are going to echo through centuries, that they have to be in a place, because it's not just about them living, but them living then allows for us to have Islam today. It's much deeper than just, hey, this is about the two of us. And they're using their wisdom and their strategy to be able to ensure that what needs to take place takes place. Instead of going forth towards Medina, Yathrib at that time, they backtrack and they take a few days in the opposite direction. And we're going to take a pause here, but just to kind of get us set to where we are, we're going to talk in the coming weeks about people they bring in who are not Muslim to guide them through the process, and why that's something that's strategic and important to understand. Where they experience like deep fear and anxiety. So there's going to be moments where they're in the cave of Thor, and Abu Bakr radiallahu an is afraid. And this is where like the role of the spider comes in, and cobwebs, and the Prophet alayhi salam tells him to not have fear. Allah is with them, quoting the Quran, until we get to like when they stop at Quba and build the masjid in Quba, and then go on to the city itself and are welcomed in. But a couple of quick things just before we take a pause. And if people are fasting, sorry we don't have dates, but thank you to whoever brought the dates and is passing them around. If you need to break your fast, feel free to do that. Tomorrow is Thursday, and it's the day of Arafah. If you're able to fast tomorrow, you should. The fast is essentially the same fast as like the fast you would have in Ramadan. If you can wake up for suhoor, try your best to wake up for it. There's barakah in suhoor, even if you take just a sip of water, right? If you haven't been fasting as of recent, and you're not kind of accustomed to the length of the fast, as well as tomorrow is going to be really hot, right? It's supposed to hit 90 degrees tomorrow. Well, I'll make it easy for us, which is probably the hottest it's been thus far this summer. Just be mindful of that, right? You don't have to like go on a mission to fast, but if you're going to be out in the sun and in the heat, really important to hydrate yourself well tonight and be ready with that. Tomorrow we're going to have iftar on the 5th floor, and even if you're not fasting, thank you so much. Even if you're not fasting, you can come and join us at 6. We're going to have a program. We'll make dua on the day of Arafah. Like it's a day that it's emphasized to make duas, even if you're not at the plane of Arafah, Allah accept from all of the Hajjaj. But you want to make dua, so we'll make like a community dua the way we do in Ramadan on the Qiyam nights and other nights. We'll probably start that after 7, but not so much after 7, so we have enough time to kind of do it the way we do it communally. And then we'll have iftar together here in this space. Then Friday, inshallah, we're going to have Eid prayers that I'm going to be leading in the park. Sheikh Fayaz is going to be leading Eid prayers inside, according to the Jafri tradition. I'm going to be leading according to the Hanafi fiqh, so Sunni tradition. He'll be doing the Shia tradition. We're going to have brunch at 9 a.m. So we'll get seated for Eid prayers at 8. We'll start the takbirs at around 8:15 or shortly thereafter. We're going to start the prayer and the khutbah at 8:30 to wrap up by 9, so that the brunch happens at 9. And there'll be brunch on the top floor of this building. But it might, no, I think it's in the 4th floor of the building next door. So I don't think it's in the 10th floor, but I could be wrong. But it's either in the 10th floor or the 4th floor of the Kimmel Center. We're also going to be doing brunch in our new space. You're more than welcome to go to either of them. And then on Saturday at 3 o'clock, we're going to be doing an Eid banquet luncheon in the new space as well, just for people to kind of have another thing to do for Eid. So come to as much as you can. We'd love to celebrate Eid with everybody, but try to make it out. If you haven't done your udhiyah yet, we're going to send out tomorrow just the links again, as well as the toy drive link. These are all toys that are going to sick children in hospitals in New York. And we're doing this in 25 hospitals in the country, as well as hospitals in Sudan, and children who have come from Gaza to the States. So with Heal Palestine, we're working with them, and they're going to be at a camp retreat in Ohio with their families. And Sudan, we're working with the Sunnis American Physician Association, and all of it's being coordinated by Caregiver. If you were here on Tuesday night, Shazia Maiman, who started the organization, Allah accept from her and all of us, was here, and we're with volunteers and packing toys. So try to give what you can. I think as of 2 days ago, we had collected about 4,200 toys. That's a lot of children who are going to be happy, inshallah, on the day of Eid in these hospitals, right? Some of these toys are like a couple of bucks. Whatever you can give will go a long way. The udhiya also, whatever you can give. In the Hanafi school, it's considered wajib for any individual who essentially is giving zakah. In the other schools, it's considered an emphasized sunnah. But if you can contribute to any of it, we're doing udhiya directed towards orphans, children's and family in Sudan, as well as orphans evacuated to Gaza. And in both of those campaigns, you can also contribute to like medicines, water, hygiene kits. In Gaza right now, we've been able to procure about 3,000 bags of flour that we want to distribute or are distributing. And these are at a premium. They cost about $800 for a bag of flour right now because of the low supply. And there's also hygiene kits. They're just giving like laundry detergent and basic products to people who otherwise don't have it. All of it's up on the Launch Good links, and we'll recirculate them tomorrow. But try to share and spread it with people as well. So inshallah, we can give it to those who are in need. Okay, so people want to put their chairs against the wall, and there's something called the adhan.